The Viacol Dominion did not fear the unknown. They had carved their empire through the spiral arm with a precision that bordered on ritual. Each conquest was a chapter in a long, unstoppable march toward galactic supremacy, and the Dominion took pride in cataloging every victory. On the war map aboard the dreadnought Severant Prime, 164 glowing obelisks marked the worlds. They had crushed flames frozen in holographic memory. Admiral XR observed them in silence as he prepared for the next. His tall, armored form, a blend of organic tissue and obsidian exoshell, towered over the command dais. His eyes, twin pools of molten silver, reflected the battle map's violent glow. Around him, the bridge staff maintained perfect discipline, their movements sharp and synchronized, as though they obeyed not commands, but instinct. Mark, soul, I, as the next point of subjugation, XR said, his voice resonating with the deep timbre of a species engineered for war. A soft chime echoed. The hologram shifted to display a modest yellow star and 8 official planets. So I glowed faintly blue. Earth. Another world that had climbed too far, too quickly at least according to the Dominion's doctrines. Their scouts had reported a civilization that possessed faster than light communication, interplanetary industry, and an alarming degree of adaptability. Primitive by vehicle standards, yes. Harmless, only if one underestimated the unpredictable. And XR did not underestimate. He annihilated. As the Severant Prime dropped out of warp with a shuddering ripple of bent space, the rest of the vehicle fleet appeared in tight formation behind it. 37 warcruisers, 12 annihilation barges, and a dozen carriers carrying atmospheric razors and siege drones. The Dominion never relied on half measures. When they arrived in force. Before them stood the blue-white sphere of Earth, turning slowly, peacefully, unaware of its impending erasure. General Tokvar, commander of the ground legions, approached the admiral's station. Scans confirm primitive orbital defenses. Their satellites are fragile. Their ships are scattered around their moon, none armed with meaningful weaponry. Sar nodded slowly. Yet they have persisted where others would have perished. How many empires collapsed around them? How many wars should have devoured them? Their luck concerns me. Luck breaks under pressure, Admiral Tokvar said. It always does. Perhaps. But I have learned to distrust civilizations that survive against odds they should not. He remembered the rumors, strange, scattered stories whispered throughout the conquered territories. Human ships appearing where they should not have been able to travel. Human technology advancing in uncanny leaps. Human diplomats speaking as though they knew more than they revealed. Sar dismissed the superstitions. Humans were animals with tools, nothing more. Begin descent formation, he ordered. Deploy atmospheric razors. Arm the stellar lances. Today, the Dominion completes its march across the arm. Systems across the fleet awakened with lethal intent. Red lights pulsed. Weapon spines unfolded from the hulls of the warcruisers. Beneath the Severant Prime, a shimmering funnel of energy ignited an engine flare that illuminated the void with hungry violet fire. And then, as if sensing the Dominion's presence, Earth's electromagnetic field flickered. A faint distortion rippled across the planet's outer atmosphere, too small to raise concern, too brief to register on most sensors. But XR noticed. What was that? He demanded. The sensor chief frowned, tapping at his console. A fluctuation, impossible to classify. It lasted under a microsecond. Possibly a field storm or a cloaking disturbance. Cloaking, Tokvar scoffed. These primitives? Even a wounded animal can hide, XR muttered. Proceed, but maintain full spectrum awareness. The fleet surged forward. As they descended toward the blue sphere, the atmosphere shimmered again, slowly, softly, like the surface of a pond disturbed by a single falling leaf. Then it shimmered a second time, and a third. The bridge lights flickered. Alarm glyphs pulsed across the consoles. The distortion intensified, spreading across the planet's surface as though someone were peeling away a layer of reality itself. Report, XR barked. The sensor chief's voice cracked. Sir, the planet, its coordinates, its mass readings, they're fluctuating. No disappearing. Tukvar leaned over the displays in disbelief. That's impossible. Planets do not vanish. Yet Earth's oceans blurred into haze. Continents dissolved into mist. In mere heartbeats, the entire planet flickered once, twice, then faded into a translucent outline with nothing solid beneath. The Dominion had not found a world ready for conquest. They had found something pretending to be one. Sa stepped forward, eyes wide, the first hint of something alien to him creeping through his veins. Not fear, recognition. We have made a terrible mistake, he whispered, and the void answered with silence. The bridge of the Severant Prime fell into a stunned, unnatural quiet as the last faint silhouette of Earth dissolved into the void. Nebula like wisps flickered where continents should have been. The oceans bled into transparency. Even the storms, those swirling white spirals that marked Earth's atmospheric dance, evaporated like fog burned away by an invisible sun. For the first time in Admiral Aksar's career, he did not understand what he was seeing. Recalibrate the long-range scans, he barked. I am recalibrating, Admiral, the sensor chief stammered, his clawed hands working frantically over the console. No instrument is returning stable data. Tokvar slammed a fist against the railing. What trickery is this? What weapon? It isn't a weapon, XR murmured, staring at the shimmering void where a planet should have been. It is concealment. On a scale we've never even theorized. Across the fleet, reports flooded in voices tinged with confusion, frustration, fear. Primary star field distortion detected. Mass gravity readings degrading. Visual feeds returning null data. Are we hallucinating? And then, all at once, every screen in every ship snapped to black. A single symbol flared into existence. A white circle bisected by 3 thin lines. A symbol no Viracall recognized. A human symbol. Tokvar bared his mandibles. What does that mean? Before anyone could respond, the symbol pulsed slowly at first, then faster, until it vibrated in perfect sync with the fleet's sensor frequencies. The pulse became a message. Across every channel, every wavelength, every conceivable medium of communication, radio, quantum band, gravitic, optical, a voice spoke. A human voice. You have come far enough. The words echoed, slow and calm, yet carrying a gravity that bent the air around them. Tokvar stiffened. Translate. No translation needed, XR said quietly. It's speaking in our language. The voice continued. We knew this day would arrive. We saw your conquests. We watched your triumphs. 164 worlds burned beneath your march. Not because they were weak, but because you believed yourselves unstoppable. Saw's claws tightened on the railing. "Identify the speaker," he ordered. "We can't," replied the communications officer. "The signal is bouncing between layers of subspace. Every time we lock onto it, it moves. Then find the source." "We're trying." The voice cut through them like a blade. "You seek Earth, but Earth was never what you thought it was." All at once, the darkness around the vanished planet began to glow. Lines thin as spider silk yet brighter than starlight unfolded across the space where the atmosphere should have been. They traced geometric patterns, forming grids, latticework, spirals of impossible complexity. So I did not reappear. Something far larger did. The illusion peeled back like shedding skin, revealing a vast megastructure spanning the planet's diameter, rings upon rings of metallic architecture, rotating gently, humming with ancient power. The false Earth had been a projection, a mask, a veil. Tokvar staggered backward. "This cannot be real." "It is," Exor whispered, "and we've intruded into something we were never meant to see." The human voice spoke again. "This is the Terran defense lattice, older than your dominion, older than your empire's first breath. You believed us lucky. You believed us fragile. But we only allowed you to see what we wished you to see." The fleet trembled as a low-frequency rumble washed over them, as though space itself had inhaled. "You have crossed a threshold from which there is no return." Saw's eyes widened in dawning horror. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships retreat now." But space did not obey. Space had already begun to warp. The command deck trembled as the Severant Prime strained against forces no vehicle vessel had ever been designed to endure. Warning lights cascaded across the consoles, each one pulsing with a frantic crimson rhythm that filled the bridge with a feverish glow. Tokvar clung to the railing as gravity lurched sideways, then inverted, then snapped back into place with a painful jolt. "Space is moving around us," the navigation officer shouted, voice cracking. "It's folding and refolding like it's being woven." Admiral Exar felt a coldness seep into his bones. Not fear, something worse. Recognition. The faint, lingering sense that the Dominion had wandered into a cage disguised as empty sky. Outside the viewport, the false fayade of Sol's inner system peeled away entirely. Gone was the cozy yellow star. Gone were the familiar orbits. Gone was every trace of a natural solar system. In their place hung a colossal artificial grid, spanning millions of kilometers in every direction, a geometric cathedral of metallic spires, rotating rings, and interlocked structures glowing with soft white light. The sun was no sun at all, but a vast containment sphere humming with immense controlled energy. The planetary orbits were rails, conduits, and anchor nodes, massive machines masquerading as celestial bodies. Tokvar stared in paralyzed fascination. This is not possible. No species, no empire could build something of this magnitude. It defies every law of engineering. The sensor chief swallowed hard. Admiral readings indicate the lattice exceeds the mass of 10 stars. It's not just surrounding the system. It is the system. Sar stepped closer to the viewport, forcing himself to remain steady as the megastructure rotated slowly, revealing more and more of its impossible scale. The Terran defense lattice. The name alone had been enough to freeze the blood of his entire fleet. The human voice returned, calm and unwavering. You believed humanity to be young, fragile, chaotic, and in many ways, we are. But our fragility is a story we learn to weaponize. A ring of diamond-like nodes flared to life, sending ripples of energy cascading through the lattice, each pulse resonating like a heartbeat. For 200,000 years, we have prepared for the day one species would mistake our silence for weakness. The day conquest would reach our doorstep. Tokvar's voice trembled. Why hide this? Why pretend to be less than what you are? The voice answered with a tone that held no cruelty, only ancient weight. Because the galaxy fears what is powerful, and it destroys what it fears. So we chose to disappear into the noise of history until now. The lattice shifted, revealing structures so vast the fleet's senses struggled to comprehend them. Towers, kilometers tall, rotated with serene grace. Rings spun at relativistic speeds, channeling rivers of light between them like veins carrying the lifeblood of a machine god. Humanity had not merely built defenses. They had rewritten the architecture of their star system. They had turned Sol into a fortress, and the Viokal had flown straight into its heart. Sar felt his throat tighten as reality sank in. "We have trespassed," he whispered. "You have," the voice replied. "And once the lattice awakens, nothing that enters remains unchanged." Tokvar looked to Exar, eyes wide with something the Viokal had been genetically purged of generations ago. "Fear. What do we do?" he rasped. Sar straightened, forcing down the instinct to panic. "Prepare to fire all engines. If we can break free of the distortion." He never finished the sentence. The space ahead of the fleet rippled, compressing like a sheet of fabric being pinched by invisible fingers. A single line of the lattice rotated and aligned toward the Viokal armada. A beam of silent, gentle light extended from it, not a weapon, not a laser, not anything the Dominion had seen used in war. But every instinct in Exar's being told him what it meant. "It's targeting us," he breathed. The human voice spoke one last time, soft and sorrowful. "You were not meant to see our true face. But now that you have, we cannot let you leave." The beam brightened. Space cracked, and the fleet began to unravel. The first ship to break was the Varrock's Spine, a war cruiser renowned throughout the Dominion for surviving 5 supernova shockwaves and a direct hit from a trinary beam cannon. Its hull, a fortress of layered alloy and adaptive shielding, was built to withstand the wrath of collapsing stars. It lasted less than a second. A ripple of pale light washed across its outline. Where armor should have resisted, it instead shimmered like water touched by a breeze. The ship's edges blurred, softened, and then quietly, almost gracefully, it folded inward along invisible seams. No explosion, no debris, just absence. A dozen gasps echoed across the Severant Prime's bridge. "What happened?" Tokvar shouted. The sensor chief stared in disbelief. It did not explode. It did not disintegrate. It simply ceased. Admiral Exar's mandibles tightened. "Space manipulation. They are excising us from reality itself." Another flare of lattice light arced across the void. Another ship gone. Then another. And another. The Viokal fleet, an armada that had paved its empire across the spiral arm, was erased piece by piece, vessel by vessel, with the same gentle precision a surgeon uses to remove rot from living tissue. "This cannot be happening," Tokvar roared. We are the Dominion. We have conquered empires older than humanity. Sar snapped. No, not this humanity. Not the one we're seeing now. The bridge trembled again as spatial distortions pulled against the dreadnought's hull. The floor rippled like liquid beneath their feet. Panels bent at impossible angles, and some crew members clung to railings as gravity fluctuated violently. "We're being stretched," the navigation officer cried. "Across multiple axes, we're being pulled apart mathematically." The comm consoles flickered. Human words, soft, sorrowful, echoed through every channel. "You were warned." Outside, the lattice rotated, aligning more of its crystalline nodes toward the surviving vehicle ships. Each alignment produced a new wave of luminous distortion that washed across the cosmos with eerie silence. Ships, caught in the light, twisted into elongated threads of silver, stretched until their shapes dissolved like mist under sun. On the bridge, Tukvar slumped to his knees. "We cannot fight this. We cannot even understand it. Admiral, what do we do?" Sar stared at the viewport, watching his empire unravel one vessel at a time. He had never known what it meant to be helpless. Viacal conditioning stripped that sensation from them long before they left the birthing chambers. Yet now, as his crew scrambled, shouted, panicked, he felt it. Truly felt it. "We run," he whispered. But the lattice did not allow escape. The dreadnought's engines roared to maximum thrust. Space around the ship tore like stretched fabric. Geometry twisted, distances warped, and the stars themselves bent into looping spirals. The Severn Prime lurched violently, its hull shrieking as it pushed against the impossible. For a moment, just one XR thought they might break free. Then the beam touched them. Just a brush. A whisper of light. The dreadnought vibrated, not physically, but existentially. Panels flickered. The air shimmered. Crew members became translucent, their outlines softening like pencil sketches erased by a gentle hand. Tokvar stared at his dissolving fingertips, eyes wide with primal terror. "Admiral, I don't want to disappear." Sar reached for him, but his own arm blurred into particles of silvery dust. On the comms, the human voice whispered, so quiet it might have been a thought rather than sound. "We do not kill. We remove. You will not return here. You will not threaten another world." One by one, the dreadnought systems faded. The lights dimmed. The structural beams dissolved into motes of white dust drifting like snow. Admiral Exar's last sight was the Terran lattice, a serene, glowing constellation of incomprehensible order, rotating with the calm certainty of something ancient and absolute. He did not feel pain. He simply stopped. The flagship vanished. Then silence reclaimed the void. Where 50 warships had once filled space with the hum of engines and the heat of burning ambition, now there was only quiet and the slow, rhythmic pulse of the Terran megastructure returning to a dormant state. The Viacal Dominion's most powerful armada had been undone without a single shot fired. Not destroyed. Not defeated. Erased. When the last flicker of the Viacal dreadnought faded into stardust, the Terran defense lattice grew still. Its colossal rings slowed their rotations. The brilliant conduits dimmed from blinding white to the soft blue pulse of a system settling back into meditation. For a long moment, all of Sol hung in silence, silent, not because it lacked sound, but because every part of the lattice was listening, verifying, ensuring that no fragment, no echo, no quantum residue of the intruders remained. Only when the checks were complete did the great structure begin its return to dormancy. Across an expanse wider than worlds, the architecture of humanity's true legacy shifted with graceful inevitability. Massive spires retracted into the planetary shells. Energy bridges folded inward like petals closing at dusk. The containment sphere surrounding the captive star brightened, reshaping itself into the illusion of a natural solar furnace. Piece by piece, the Pleiade rebuilt itself. A false sun ignited, radiant and warm. Planetary illusions blossomed back into their assigned orbits, like actors returning to their marks. Earth reappeared last, first as a translucent outline, then an overlay of color and texture, and finally as the familiar living world, blue and white and green, serene and harmless. The continents slid into place with perfect fidelity. Clouds drifted across the atmosphere. The oceans returned to their gentle, sapphire shimmer, as though nothing had ever disturbed them. To any outside observer, the system once again looked ordinary, another quiet, unremarkable cradle of oxygen-breathing life. But the illusion was layered with care. Each mountain range, each shipping lane, each flickering city light mirrored the real Earth, hidden deep within the lattice, tucked safely in a pocket dimension that no foreign scanner could penetrate. Humanity continued its work there, unaware of how close an armada had come, or how utterly their executioners had been unmade. On the unseen frequencies that only the lattice could hear, a final command resonated soft, almost affectionate. Return to watchful silence. The colossal megastructure obeyed, yet a single node, one among billions, remained bright for a moment longer. This node was old, older than any human civilization, older than the myths that echoed across the continents it protected. It pulsed once, sending out a faint ripple of stored memory into the lattice network. A record was filed, encoded into crystalline logic. INVASIONATT MPT 165 NULIF IED V YRKALDOMINIO NFLAETREMO VED THREA TLEV LOW ST a TUSOB CRV a TIONCONTINUES. Then even that node dimmed. Far below, on the surface of the real Earth, hidden safely behind dimensional shielding, a child looked up at the sky from a quiet, lamplit street. She wondered why the stars flickered strangely for just an instant, as though something immense had moved between them. But the moment passed, and she dismissed it as imagination. Humanity continued as it always had, building, dreaming, making mistakes, learning, stumbling toward the future with stubborn resilience. Little did the people of Earth know that their species had long since become something older, wiser, and far more powerful than their myths allowed them to understand. Evolution had taken many forms across human history. Most believed it was biological, or social, or technological. Only the lattice knew the truth. Humanity had evolved into secrecy, and the secrecy had built itself into a shield that could bend space, rewrite the laws of matter, and erase the most powerful armadas the galaxy could conjure. But it never did so lightly. Only when threatened. Only when provoked. Only when the sleeping giant was forced to stir. And now, with the 165 the threat erased as though it had never been, the giant settled back into rest, quiet, unassuming, wrapped in a disguise of fragility that every nearby civilization had always believed. As the false Earth rotated gently around the false Sun, a final whisper echoed through the hidden depths of the lattice, meant for no ears but the stars. We endure. We observe. We wait. Humanity returned to sleep, its claws once again hidden behind the soft illusion of a harmless world waiting, watching, and ready to awaken the moment the galaxy forgot what happened to the last empire foolish enough to come knocking. The Terran continuum grew still, and the giant dreamed.